Welcome, 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 everybody. Going to give everybody a couple of minutes to kind of get in the room. And while we're waiting for everyone to join us, um, I just want to take a moment and thank the National Flute Association for hosting this workshop on demystifying contemporary flute pedagogy. And I'm super excited to be spending this time with you. So before we get started, while we're waiting for everyone to come in the room, I wonder if you all might just like drop in the chat for me where you're joining from, so I have a sense of who's here. And like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how comfortable do you feel teaching contemporary flute music and sounds? What are your biggest challenges in that? So I can get a sense of where we're at in the room. Let's go ahead and drop all of that in the chat. And we shall see. Hello, hello, everybody. Oh, Fort Worth. Awesome. Welcome, Mary and Christine. Semi-proficient. Cool. And what are your biggest challenges? What are, like, if y'all have thoughts on, like, what things give you trouble or what things you're not sure about, that will help me as we go through everything today. Hey, East Hampton, Connecticut. Awesome. Semi-proficient. Helene. Is it Helene or Helen? Let me know. Hey, Susan. Good to see you in Winnipeg. Okay. Comfy. Okay. So challenges singing while playing. Okay. Oh, awesome. Welcome, Anna from Croatia. Cool. Excellent. And Fairbanks, Alaska. Also semi-proficient. Okay. Welcome from Virginia, Debbie. Very little experience with extent techniques. Okay, cool. Alyssa. Ooh, wow, you are up late or early in Australia. Hey, Madeline. In Chicago, hey, yes, Chicago. All right, cool. Awesome. If you all are just joining us in here and gathering in, we're just dropping in the chat where you're joining us from. So I have a sense of who's here. And then like on a scale of 1 to 10 or so, how comfortable are you teaching contemporary flute music and sounds, and what are some of the challenges that you face with that? I just want to get a sense of who's in the room. Help with progression of pieces to use with middle school through high school students. Okay, I have some things for you on that. Awesome. Hey, welcome Susan from New York. Very early. Yeah, it's very early for you, Alyssa. Okay. Well, thanks for being here. All right. All right. Cool, cool, cool. Welcome, everybody. So, great. Let's see if there's... Hey, Anne, it's good to see you. And if y'all are comfortable putting your cameras on, it's like really nice to see faces to talk to. It's cool if you don't want to. It's cool. It's cool. But if you want to. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Anne, how to get high school to using new techniques. Yeah, got some stuff for you. Okay. Yeah, there'll be handouts. I have some resources. You'll get a bunch of stuff at the end. PDF with a bunch of resources. So, okay, and everyone, you are going to need your flutes today. This is a very interactive workshop. You're going to be doing a lot of stuff. So, if you need a moment to go grab flutes, and yes, Alyssa, I realize it might be too early in the morning for you to do that. That's cool. It's cool. Don't worry. All right. So, awesome. Okay. Well, we're just going to get started here. And before we dive in, I do have a few rules for our time together here. I find these are very important to creating a good collaborative environment here. So rule number 1 is to be a peer. Nobody in this room is above, nobody is below. We are all going to learn together and from each other. So very important there. Number 2, please step forward and step back sometimes. Make room for everybody's voice to be heard. I do want to hear everybody's voice in the room at some point. So if you're somebody who always speaks up right away, cool, awesome. Every once in a while, hang back a sec. And if you are somebody who rarely speaks into a large room like this, I'm going to challenge you to hear your voice in the room at least once during our hour together. Rule number 3, can't is an illegal 4-letter word. It does not exist. In our universe, we are going to try everything because it's possible. And rule number 4, please be ready to risk and lean into the risk. We're going to do some stuff that maybe you're not familiar with yet or feels like a little bit weird or uncomfortable, and that's okay. we're going to learn from this. And learning can be a messy process. So I'm going to ask you to take those risks and be vulnerable and respect each other's boundaries, of course, too. Okay, so for those of you who do not know me, my name is Shanna Pranaitis. I'm a flutist kind of specialized in contemporary performance practice. I'm also a business and transformational coach for musicians, and I'm the co-founder and artistic director of Flute Expansions, which is an online e-learning resource for all things contemporary flute. So we won't have an enormous amount of time today really to go over the individual extended techniques. That's like a much longer workshop, but all the information that you would need about producing the extended techniques and a whole bunch of other resources is on Flute Expansions, and I will give you that information later. So today we're going to be focusing on how you can incorporate contemporary flute sounds and music into your teaching to help your students experience more freedom in their creative process and have a more diverse musical experience too, because the most diverse body of creators and composers are the last 100 years primarily. So are we all ready? Everybody ready? We're ready? Yeah? Excited? Yeah. Okay, cool. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, when we think of the typical model of teaching flute, and if we're thinking about as like beginners, maybe starting beginners, what do you generally think of? Like maybe go ahead and drop this in the chat. What do you talk about with your students at first? Like what are some of the most like beginner important things that you want to talk about? Or even like if you get a student early in undergrad or high school, like what are some of the things that you're talking about them? What kinds of goals do you have for sounds for them? So just maybe drop those things in the chat. Let's see what everybody's thoughts are about this. Give that a couple minutes. Yeah, putting together an instrument. Yeah. It's like battle number one. But very cool. And like, what about when we're thinking about like the kinds of things we talk about in relationship to sound? I'm going to focus your attention there on sound specifically, and just thoughts that come off of the top of your head. Nice tone in all registers, dynamic control and flexibility. Yep, excellent. And yeah, posture and breath control, Debbie. Cool. What about like the quality of the sounds? Yeah, flowing free and open sound. Yeah, cool. Excellent. Linda, Helen. Beginners getting a sound. You just start with just the head and have them play with the head and playing using. Oh yeah, love the slide whistle. Excellent. Cool. Good precision, Fernando. Excellent, Debbie. Developing a listening ear. Yeah, okay, cool. Excellent. Great. I love this. So I'm curious though, if we think about like the starting points for when we're talking about tone itself. When we start talking about tone, what is the thing that we usually want them to eliminate from their sound? Like what makes good tone for, like how are we typically describing good tone? Oh, hey, Lisa. Good to see you. Damn, you're experimenting with different sounds. Yes. Okay. Right. I knew you'd be with me on that one. So when we're thinking about tone, something that I hear a lot of people talking about generally, and I of course myself also will say these kinds of things of like we want to eliminate the air out of the sound. We want a really good focus sound, a good resonant sound. And if we talk about that exclusively, that is exactly what we're doing. We are excluding other types of sounds right from the get-go. And if instead from day one, if we're saying that some sounds are good and some are bad, like, oh, we don't want that air sound, we don't want the like bizarre multiphonics that they sometimes play, then years later when they are sufficiently good at regular tone, if only then they can do these things that we've been telling them for years not to do, like play air sounds and multiphonics. So for me, I think it's really important, like the basis of pedagogy for contemporary pedagogy starts from a place of like keeping openness and curiosity and exploration in the process of learning for the students. So what if instead we focused on including more sounds from the beginning and teaching them how to control different sounds and when to use them, instead of telling them that you can't have air sounds there, or like we don't want any air in the sound. Like why not talk to them about the possibility of how air can be a sound used in music, and sometimes we mix it half and half, and sometimes we don't, and letting them learn how to control that, because then they actually have more control over their sound and over the way that they are producing sound ultimately. And the truth is that beginner flutists are like brilliant at contemporary flute sounds. They get multiphonic super easy. They love making a whole bunch of weird noises on the flute. So, like, that's really the main question for me, is like, what if we encourage students to explore the range of possibilities that's of that sound, of every sound they can make on the instrument, and steer them towards a direction that you want them to go, right? So we can kind of focus their attention while keeping all options open. And so one of my favorite tools to use with students of any level and any age, and this goes for students that I've had come in as like retired tax attorneys, for example, who haven't played in, 20, 30 years, something like that, or baby beginners and everything in between. So one of my favorite tools for this is using like sound exploration and a kind of improvisation with this. And you get to do it today. It's going to be great. So I am curious, what kinds of sounds can you make with your instruments? So can you drop in the chat all of the different kinds of sounds you can make on flutes? When you think of like, what are all of the different ways that you can create sounds? Just keep dropping those into the chat as they occur to you. So, and we generally have kind of 3 categories of sounds for us, like anything in the articulation range that's could be a full range of something from slurs to staccatos to flutter tongue to accents to nose, right? Any kind of way that you might articulate something, that is a quality of sound that we can explore. We have tone and air sounds that are like things like vibrato, whistle tones, aeolian and air sounds, singing and playing, multiphonics. The list goes on and on from those things. Like anything you can think of that is like a sound that you can make on the flute. And then percussive sounds of key clicks and tongue rams and pizzicatos. And then there's like combinations, right? How many different combinations can you put together too of these things? Yeah, awesome, cool. So I'm seeing some good things here in the chat. Yeah, key clicks, so tongue pizzicato, right? Tongue rams, whistle tones, flutter, aeolian. Yes, microtones, absolutely. Slides or glissandos. Slides, falls. Those all basically fall under categories of like glissandos, types of glissandos. Great. Oh, yeah. Taking the head joint off, almost off of the face. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what a finger pop would be either. I think maybe you mean finger, like a key click. There's a lot of different ways of calling these things. So yeah, like there's a ton of possibilities. And then the way that you can combine these things in a bazillion different ways. So what I would like you to do right now is take your flutes, any flute, doesn't matter. All right, and we're going to explore these sounds. I want you to use one note and only one note. Absolutely no octave transpositions. Don't do it. No octaves. One single pitch, so choose wisely. And figure out as many different sounds that you can make with that one single note. Like, what if you needed to keep that note interesting, that one single note interesting for 10 minutes? Okay, you can use any kind of sound quality, any kind of alterations, any kind of technique, articulation, timbres, rhythms, etc. for this note. For any, like you can make it any length you want, but only one pitch as the foundation. All right, and the idea is like, how many different ways can you make sound with this one note? And we're gonna do this for like 2-3 minutes or so. And you're going to want to kind of keep track of what different sounds you come up with, because you're going to need these later too. So, and probably for like the first minute, it's going to be like fine. And then right around minute 2 or 3, you might start to get stuck and think you've come up with all the possible sounds. I'm going to challenge you to stay curious longer and ask yourself what else is possible with this one note. Like, what other things could I possibly do with this? So really to explore it with like the beginner's mind. And so I'm going to pop these instructions into the chat for you so you can see them. All right. Oh, I don't know why there's two fours there. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna put like 2, 3 minutes on the clock and explore away. All right. And if you have any questions, please feel free to like pop those in the chat or raise a Zoom hand. That is totally fine at any time. All right. Happy exploring. We'll see you guys in like 2, 3 minutes. Okay. Excellent. So you might feel okay, we're back. I think we're back. Okay.
My apologies. I think I had an issue with my internet here.
Oh, it's okay. The recording stops, so just
Okay.
so you know, so it'll have you want to restart that. Uh, it's like no, nothing happened. Um, I just dropped that back in the chat for you if you just hopped in here, and um, I'm happy to answer questions about that. But we're basically exploring all of the possible sounds, and so I'm curious for you. How was that? Either drop your observations in the chat, or if you want to like raise a Zoom hand or unmute and talk, like I love to hear voices. It's great. How was it exploring just that one note? Like, how did that feel? Did you discover anything new for you? Ooh, you found some new sounds, Jane. Awesome. Like, what kinds of sounds did you discover for yourself? I'm curious. Do you want to tell us? It's okay. You don't have to, but if you want to. Combinations, yes. Flutter and wind sounds, awesome, excellent. Anybody else have like observations of how that felt? hard not to go into harmonics. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It can be tricky, right? And it's, you know, I'm being rather strict with that one note thing. Like, I guess technically harmonics would be kind of okay if it's like off of the fundamental, but it's an interesting constriction to have that, to have just that one note, to have that limit put on. Um, Anybody else have anything they would like to share, either out loud or in the chat, about how that felt? Started to mix things. Awesome. And add from my recorder playing things like, oh, yes, yes, absolutely. Right? It's so interesting, right? That the other instruments that we play, like recorder or any other instrument you play, you can take those ideas for sounds of how can I transmit them or translate those onto the flute. And it's even like any other kind of random sound, like the sound of like fingernails on a accordion like surface, that kind of thing. Like, how could you do that on the flute, for example? Lots of lip contortions and tongue placements. Awesome, Lisa. Cool. Cool. Excellent. Well, I mean, I hope this was fun to do this. And I know Cindy, you said it was fun. So that's really great, right? And you learned something about sounds on the flute. And this is why I use this with all of my students, no matter what level they're at, that because it encourages them to play and explore air and tone and all the different things that they can do with their instrument. It keeps possibilities open, it keeps curiosity and creativity open. And the important part about this is that there's no tension involved because you're not worried about getting something right or wrong. You're just exploring. There's no how to do a thing, right? It's a kind of fun playfulness, and bringing play into the equation is so important because play is like that puts us in a very specific kind of mental state that allows for learning to happen a lot easier. So this is super helpful when we are working with students, because when we are at our most creative, our most like in our most playful state, we have the highest capacity to learn. So this is a thing that you can do with, like, you can do it with groups, you can do it with students of any age. And it's especially helpful when you have students who are kind of like afraid of making mistakes. And when they learn that it's okay to like make weird sounds on the flute and encourage them to figure out like, oh, how do you do that? How do you balance that difference between like all air sound or half air? Because the truth of the matter is that like I could tell you how I make a difference and how I control the amount of air I put into my sound and into my tone and take out, but that's my face and my oral cavity. That's not necessarily going to work for you. And everybody's the way our embouchures work, everybody's face is different. And so giving them permission to kind of figure it out for themselves, that's a lot. It has a higher potential of sticking too, right? That the knowledge is like deeply ingrained in their body. So part 2 of this is also something really fun. So I'm just curious, is anybody, can I see a show of hands, Zoom or otherwise, is anybody like terrified of improvising? Anybody? Like, yeah, yes, thank you for admitting that. Awesome. And if you didn't raise your hand, that's totally okay. Good news, you're normal. Bad news, you're normal. Right? So it's totally normal to feel like a little bit of fear around that. And a lot of times it's because we haven't done it a lot, right? So I'm just going to set all of your minds at ease. You actually improvise all the time. Your entire life is an improvisation. Every time you have a conversation with somebody, you are improvising. Okay? So it's essential because improvisation is basically just making something up in the moment. And in terms of music, you can kind of think of it as like instant composition with no rules, no good or bad kind of thing. And we can get blocked about improv because we think it has to be good or right, or that there's something special we're supposed to know about how to do it. And the truth is, all you need to do is like listen and respond to what you hear, and maybe tune into your intuition of what you want to play at that moment. And yeah, there are different kinds of improvisation. Like jazz has its own set of rules for that. And we're not talking about jazz improvisation. I'm speaking specifically about completely free improv. And this is a thing that happens a lot in contemporary music. And I mean, I have entire pieces that are primarily improvised, that are like video scores or graphic scores. And sometimes you just get on stage with people and improvise. So, not that you have to do that, but what we're going to do is we're going to do a little experimentation and group experience with this. And it's a group game. So, you can do this with your students too, in person or online. It works great. And what we are going to do is, well, first, please make sure that your original sound is enabled because you're going to need this. And we are going to go into breakout groups. And you're going to play. You're going to take your one note. All right, the one note that you've been using and like exploring as many different sounds as you can make on that. Now you've got like a library of sounds, a vocabulary of sounds for your one note that you can use. And we're going to go into breakout rooms, and with like 3 people, I think everybody has 3 in the room. Okay, and you get to use your one note. So there should be a total of 2 to 3 notes in the room, absolute max. And if all of you are playing A, it's totally fine. It's going to be awesome. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter what if there's duplicates. All right. So my suggestion is to go in alphabetical order by first name, or you can go in a free order. It doesn't really matter. Whatever you are comfortable with. And you're just going to listen and play. Decide who goes first. Somebody just go. All right. And just listen and play together using just your one note ideas. All right. Silence is okay. You get to overlap. Okay. You can't join the audio. Okay. Silence is okay. Or if you want to overlap, interject an idea. All right. That's cool. The main point is to stay curious longer and just have fun and play with your one note of like, what do you want to respond to, right? See what happens if. So I'm going to put these instructions in there. We're going to give everybody like 5 minutes together. And then let me just check out the breakout rooms for a hot second. Is there anybody else who cannot go in the breakout rooms? We're not able to detect to sound. Okay. Oh, okay, that's no problem. Alyssa, I sort of figured. Let me just double check and make. So we're gonna have. Okay. Let me just recreate this for a second. Good. Oh, all right. Okay. Make sure here that we don't have too many. Okay. So there's, okay, hold on. All right. Make sure that we don't have anybody. We're going to have, so those of you who cannot, oh, okay. All right. So those of you who cannot go into a room, if you can't connect to sound, it's cool. Don't worry about it. You're going to get an invite. Don't go. Just stay here. It's going to be fine. Let me find the other room where we've got, I have to do this a little bit guerrilla here at the last second here. Okay, so that's cool. Okay. All right. I'm going to move you to here. All right. I think this is going to work out. All right. So I'm going to open up the rooms. Does anybody have questions? It's going to be fun. I promise. All right, so you should be able to see the instructions in the breakout room, and I'll put 5 minutes on the clock. And if you cannot connect to sound, or if you don't want to go, it's cool. Just stay here. Just don't join the room. It's fine, okay? All right, if you need help, ask for help in the room. All right, here we go. Okay. All right, welcome back, everybody. So how was that for you? Let's take a few minutes and talk and sort of share some of our experiences. Would anyone like to share what that experience was like for them?
Actually, I had a blast. I had a person from Mexico. I had someone from Australia. And I don't know who the other one was, but we had a wonderful time, and we did a little bit of jazz stuff at the end where they played and I played, and then we kind of patterned off of each other and then diverted, and It was fun. Thank you.
Cool. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Wonderful. Good. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else like to share what that experience was like, especially being so limited to like your one note? You know, super fun, Pamela. Oh, cool. Super fun. Need to follow Dorley and learn from what she was creating. Awesome. Great. I'm so glad you enjoyed that experience. Yeah, Susan, go for it.
Hi, well, I thought it was lots of fun. There were I just had a partner, and my favorite part was when we improved off of each other. She'd play something, and I'd try to do something that answered what she was doing. So,
Oh, fantastic.
mhm.
Excellent.
I
That
did
sounds
have trouble
great.
not playing another note, though.
It is tricky, isn't it? It's really tricky to feel that constrained. However, what did you notice um, in the wait? Is anybody still left in? No, no, the rooms are closed. We're cool. Okay. And I just want to let's see here, Madeline. Yeah, you'd all chosen the same note. Oh, very cool. How was that? Do you want to unmute and tell us what that was like with having just one note in the room?
It was very convenient to have just like one tone.
Yeah. And what did you notice about like the way you all were using sounds over the course of it since you only had that one note and it all happened to be the same? What was that like?
I think definitely what Pamela said, that we started playing off of each other more because maybe we were doing that same tone. We could very quickly adjust to like play something that was like matching or came off similarly.
Okay, cool. Awesome. That's great to hear. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's the possibility, like being that limited in materials. And for those of us in the room who have like done a lot of improvising, looking at like you, Anne, and Lisa. um, so, like, to be that constrained, it really forces you to think about what else can I do with this one note and to get really creative with the options available in the sound. And you might find yourself doing things you didn't know you could do or sounds you'd never heard before in some kind of combination of things. And so this is so great with students. Like they freaking love this. And truly of any level and any age, because the more advanced the students are, the more like deep down the rabbit hole they go and like thinking about different things they can do with the sound. And it really helps them to like free up and open up their concept of what sounds are possible and to be free in exploring, which is a huge thing for me primarily. Like when I am teaching, when we're talking about introducing contemporary flute sounds into little ones, elementary school, like baby beginners through high school, college, whatever level, to introduce these in a way that is just fun and exploratory. Because if it feels really foreign to them, it's totally fine if they've never done it before. Like it might be like really weird and kind of scary to do some of this stuff. If we can do it in a way that's fun and just about like being messy and exploring stuff, it takes all the pressure off. Okay. And bonus, they learn to improv. Super useful. Okay. Because the like really important part about improv and this kind of exploration is not just that it's fun, but students learn to trust their own musical instincts and ideas. And I hope I'm not going out on a limb here saying that I think ultimately our goal as teachers is that they are independent of us eventually, that they're able to make their own musical decisions eventually, their own phrasing decisions. Well, if they're only ever relying on us to tell them everything, then all of a sudden it's like we take the security blanket away at some point when they leave or when they graduate, when they go on, and they've not maybe practiced how to do that. Whereas with improv, it's literally just about what it is they're hearing, and they're exploring their own ideas, and they're exploring that like, oh, that did not go how I wanted that to go. Some bizarro thing just came out of my flute. Cool. Now what am I going to do with that? And they learn to like think in the moment as well, so that when they are performing, I don't know, Mozart concerto or something, and something goes a little off the rails, or their memory like fails for a moment, they aren't freaking out because they know that, okay, I might have to improvise this just a wee bit, but then I'm going to be fine. you know. So the benefits of this are like across any kind of music that you're going to be playing, all right? But in answer to some of the questions that came up right at the beginning, like how do I introduce it, it's really like this, all right? And I actually use things like Will Offerman's improvisation calendar, which is just 52 weeks of images, and introduce them to improvising with that. And then I will have students very specifically incorporating maybe a specific technique, or asking them to do that as they learn what they're called and things like this. But at first we just start with, how many different sounds can you make? And let me tell you, if you give them the assignment of come back with this one note, and I want to know how many different ways you can do this note, they will come back with some very interesting sounds, which is super fun for you to hear. So I want to pause there for a moment and see, does anybody have any questions about like what we were doing with sound exploration and improvisation at the moment? This hour is going to go by real fast. Okay, well, if questions pop up and you want to drop them in the chat, that's cool. If you want to raise a Zoom hand, all for that. That's awesome. So what I want to do now is kind of just go through a little bit more of like more formally, if we're going to be introducing new music and sounds more formally to them. And for me, this is really a process of exercises. I love inventing exercises to refine skills. It's kind of my jam. And I've prepared a handout for you for these. Do not worry, you're going to get them. But let's take a look at some of these. Let me get to share the screensies. Here we go. Okay. Oh, this is the wrong one. Wait, here we go. Okay. So you may have seen this floating around the internet if you follow me anywhere, expanded warm-ups. And this is a thing that we do through Flute Expansions too, this expanded warm-up series. And so these are some of the exercises that I use to introduce these things. And whistle tones, right from the beginning, we teach them how to do this. And this is part of like warm-ups, all right? And the reason that I do this is because it teaches a relaxed embouchure and control of the airstream with like really precise air control, all right, air direction and control. So that exercise, can I see a show of hands? Does anybody have no idea what I'm talking about when I'm saying whistle tones? Would like to see. I can't really see the whole room. I guess raise a Zoom hand if you don't know what I'm talking about with whistle tones. That way I can see. Hopefully we all have played around with these. Okay. All right. I don't see any blank stares. So with whistle tones, this exercise is, and there's a lot of different things that you can do with them, but to just play simply long notes on it, starting on like a high G, fingering the high G so that you have the long note and sustaining it as long as you can. There's like instructions there, but like generally as long as you can. Hopefully we can hear that. Can you guys hear that? Madeline, did you hear that? Yeah, cool, awesome. Thanks. So the reason for sustaining them like this is that it's going to help them develop a super controlled airstream, because if you're getting like potholes in the road, that kind of thing where it's absolutely not steady and are going through different harmonics, if that's happening at the microscopic level, and if that happens at the micro level, it's happening at the macro level in their full sound when they blow into the instrument. So this improves their high register playing and like control of the airstream, like steadiness of it, which is really great for soft playing, okay, and like lightness in the sound. Things that I also use are like a chromatic slinky exercise, which is basically just a pitch bend exercise. So going down or going up. And when I start students with this, and it's only by the lip, we do not move the head joint or your fingers. That is a different kind of thing. But to get that flexibility in our embouchure first, so that you can control all sorts of things in pitch and dynamics. All right. And you can have them just start, and it depends on the level of the student, right, where you're going to start with these things, but you can have them just start and just bend down as far as they can. So if we're only moving the lips, we're thinking like really coming very, very far forward. And I would recommend doing this in front of a mirror at first because it's so much lip movement. It's like lip gymnastics, really. Okay, and if you're not used to doing this, it's going to feel hecka weird. All right, so, and from the side. So we're really coming very, very far forward. And at first, when a student is doing this, they might only get like a little baby dive. Or even you, if you haven't done a lot of this, it's okay. All right, might get a little baby dive. And that's great. Starts there. All right, and if you do this every day or, a few times a week, and we're working on like, how far down can I go? Right, and doing long tones, just like Maurice long tones. How far down can you go? And slinky on down. Eventually, you're going to get to the point where you can really bend this really far. Okay, super useful if you have to like match a horrendous pitch situation in orchestra. And then to go up, you're going to just simply do the opposite, and you're going to do the thing that we're all not supposed to do, which is like smile while you play. Right, jaw comes kind of forward, lips up, and smile. Eventually the sound stops and we have a little bit less range when we're going up because at a certain point the air is no longer going into the tube because you're aiming so far up. So that's where we go with the chromatic slinky business. And these are all things that you can practice for in a whole lot of different ways too. So singing and playing, I'm sure a lot of us have done this, and there's like so much benefit to doing this, right? It's not just opening up the throat for more resonance and like more relaxing through there. It's like deeper body awareness, but also training our ears, what we're hearing, like what just intonation might sound like with ourselves. There's like a whole bunch of different things you can do with it. Okay. You can keep the voice steady and like in unison, voice steady, move the voice, keep the flute steady, all sorts of things. The one that I think that actually becomes really important for us is the Aeolian tone, the like windy long tones. And can you learn to control and allow air coming in and out of the sound? This can be a tone color thing sometimes too, but where we start with like any note, and you can either go from air to full tone back to air or pick one direction or the other, whatever's most comfortable for you, but really exploring like all the range. And what do you have to do to allow that to happen? And so that the pitch does not go wild, okay? So we're not like, right? We want to, as much as possible, keep the center of the pitch the same. So learning to control that, like if you can learn to control how much air you are allowing in or not allowing into the sound and all the gradations in between, you know exactly where those notes sit. It's like, it's an issue. For me, it really actually kind of does come down to like how much control I have over my instrument as a tool and what can I do with it. And that I know no matter what, I know exactly where those sounds are. And it's really useful for like little ones. If we want to get tightness out of your upper register, have a student do long tones up there. Like airy long tones. You cannot have a tight embouchure and play airy long tones. You have to figure out how to give a little bit of space in there, and then they're released from that. So if they can learn how to do that and have space for options, they're less likely to get locked into, that kind of horrifying squeezy sound. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see you guys. Okay. Did you propose to do the exercise in the beginning? I do a lot, Fernando. I do a lot of these in the beginning in different ways. Maybe not necessarily the whistle tones right away with like a baby beginner because they just start trying to figure out where their face is in the first place. Like they're real good at the windy sounds. I find the windy long tones are really great for beginners because then they're like, they don't feel bad about having an airy sound, right? It's actually become like they don't put this like weight on themselves that they're bad, that they're not making a good sound or not pleasing us or something. They're learning to, oh, where's that boundary? And then it's a game for them. So that's super helpful. But yeah, as soon as, especially once we get into like upper register stuff, they get the whistle tone stuff right away. And a lot of times the pitch bend stuff right away too, as well. The glissando work. I mean, and if you're my students, like you're doing all sorts of things, like graphic score, flute choir stuff, sounding like a frog or whatever. And let's see here. So what are your favorite ways to teach whistle tones? Struggle to find them. I'm not sure. Oh, okay. Right. Whistle tones. It can take a while. A lot of times they're super, super soft. The sooner the better, because then they avoid getting too tight in their face. And especially if you've got a student who's learning piccolo, oh man, do they need whistle tones, because they got to get out of piccolo face immediately. And so I teach them this right away, and then if they have to play piccolo, I'm like, I don't care what else is going on at the end of band, pick up your flute and play a whistle tone. Just do it, so they don't get stuck. But in terms of like teaching whistle tones, everyone, it's exhaling into the flute. You are not blowing. This is the big thing about whistle tones. Do not blow. It is an exercise in not playing the flute in many ways. So if you just like take a breath like a normal human and just exhale into your hand, and then do that through a flute embouchure. Imagine you have a flute. You're going to have like some nice, warm, moist air going on there. And that's what you do. Like without fail, that it seems to work for pretty much everybody. A lot of times the problem is that they think they have to blow. Mostly because, like, how many times do they not blow enough? And we're like, blow at them, And this is the opposite. So, like, I'll usually just tell them to put some, like, low note down. So that way, whatever pitch comes out, it's fine. A lot of times what we're hearing is, you get, like, an awesome blend of aeolian and whistle tones, which is a cool sound, but not what we're aiming for. And so then it's just an effort of like, no, less, blow less. As a matter of fact, just please don't blow. Can you just breathe? Can you just like breathe? Exhale through the flute. And once they figure it out, like how little effort it is, then it's okay. It's getting them to believe that they don't have to put that much effort in. That's a fantastic question, Anne. Thanks. Madeline, do you introduce these exercises in tandem with extended technique pieces, or do you blend them in with typical warm-ups? Brilliant question. Love that. Both. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do, I think just because we're a little bit low on time, I'm going to show you some of the resources, and you're going to get this PDF. Do not panic. You're getting it. Okay. So yes, actually I introduced them with stuff, so you're going to get a bonus thing that I just didn't have time for today. I send them all to Flute Expansions, and yes, I am biased, but I know the material on that site. You can find anything you want on that site for like how to do any of the techniques, and like really up close videos and stuff. So that's where they get sent first to learn those things. And then actually, Tim Hagen has this freaking brilliant project, this Caprice project, and there'll be 3 volumes eventually. He's just finished volume 1, and it's just being published now. It's short duet etudes that introduce the techniques in like a progressive order for like total beginner flutists or total beginner with extended techniques, either way. But you can play them as duets with your student, or they can play them with themselves if they want to use something like a cappella or just record themselves. Super great. And it goes, book 1 ends with a graphic score, which is fantastic. And I also use like Will Offerman's improvisation calendar. There's also I wrote down the improv exercises we did here, and I gave you guys some repertoire suggestions. And so things that I tend to use right away is whatever the student is interested in. Sometimes Aiken's Icicle is perfect, or any one of the Clark pieces, depending on where they're at level-wise. Sophie Dufresne's Couleur Neige is fantastic. And some of these pieces in the beginner pile or maybe not like beginner flutist. It's just beginner extent techniques. So there's some pieces there to coordinate, and then I do things like flute choir stuff. Gareth McLaren has a really great piece. Oh my God, I'm gonna blank on its name, but it's a fantastic piece with like free section in the middle and a whole bunch of different sounds and techniques involved. Yeah, blanking on it at the moment, but yes, there's that. What else was I gonna say about this? Oh, right, yeah, okay. So the Flute Expansions, Flute Expansions has a searchable and sortable database that you can search for pieces as well. So you can go in and put what techniques you want. So if you've got a student who's like loving the tongue ram, because who doesn't? You can put that in, and you're gonna want to look for like level 1. You know, if they're just starting out. So on the Flute Expansions database, those levels are based off of the level of difficulty of the extended techniques in the piece, not necessarily the level of difficulty of the piece. And it's, of course, it's not a finished source. It doesn't have everything in it. If there are pieces you know, please add them. It's a crowdsourced database. So we're gathering as much information from anybody. That way it's kind of all in one place. Yeah, it's fantastic questions. Thanks, Madeline. That's great. Any other questions? I feel I could go for like hours on this. Actually, like I have a 6-hour pedagogy thing that we just don't have time for today because we have 1 hour. But I guess I will just open that up to any questions, and I have time. I can stay if we have enough questions to do that. So either raise your Zoom hand or unmute or drop them in the chat. Oh, beatboxing pieces. Yeah, those should also be on, I think there are starting to be some pieces listed in the Flute Expansions thing. That is not a thing I do a lot of. There are pieces, there's a whole book that Brandy Huddleston wrote called The Art of Beatboxing. It has some fantastic pieces in it. They're quite difficult. Of course, Greg Patillo has fantastic pieces too, like 3 Beats is the classic one, entry level one there. And there are a number of other people who have written that. And I think Nicole Chamberlain has a new book out too. She wrote it with somebody, Beatboxing Beyond or something like this. There's another book of material out there for that. I don't tend to do a lot of beatboxing just because it tends to blow out your face a little bit. For me, it blows out my face a bit, so I just avoid it. Oh, you're very welcome, Madeline. Yeah, so any questions about anything?
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Shanna. Thank you for an amazing session. I'm Daniel with the NFA. I will be stopping the recording here, but you can stay with Shanna as she mentioned here, and she'll be sharing the PDF with me, and I will send it to everyone sometime this week. The recording of this event will be posted on our website, nfa.online.org, and you can see it there. Okay, Shanna, thank you so much. I'll stay in the background here, mute and stop stop my video, and then you can do whatever you need to do. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank
you guys are fantastic.